So I found those like solid causes that I really cared about. And when I got to Hagerstown, I got involved with those organizations. And I noticed right off the bat that not only was it good for my soul to do that, but I always found really great stories, especially in a small town. And I got networked with a lot of people. And it helps to be a member of the community because people see you on the TV and they may have a connection with you, they may not. But it's easy to have that like one-dimensional look at someone on your TV. And then you go out in the community and you volunteer and you do all these things and people really get to know you and they see that you do care, even if you're only in that community for a short time.
Welcome to the Next Level Journalist, where you will hear from some of the best journalists in the business or who have been there, done that, and willing to share with you what they've learned so you can get better, faster.
My guest today is someone I've known since 2012 when we worked together at WLEX TV in Lexington, Kentucky. I was the weekend sports anchor at the time. She was the weekend news anchor at the time. So we shared the desk, but since then she's moved on to DC. Now she's in Nashville. Nikki Burdine, thank you so much for making time for this conversation today.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to be here. It's good to see your face.
You as well, even if it is in this virtual season that we're in. But like I said, you and I, we've known each other for almost, 8 years now. It's been a handful of years since we've actually been in the same city and worked together. But you've moved on and climbed the ranks. So you tell us, give us an idea of what your journey's been like, your career, dating back to when you knew you wanted to do this and basically how you pursued it in a Cliff Notes version of getting us up to date.
Well, I started out in this business, I guess you could say, in college. I went to the University of Tennessee, majored initially in public relations and took PR class, but as a part of that curriculum, I had to take a journalism elective and have an internship with either the TV station on campus, the newspaper, or the radio station. I chose the TV station. And essentially the rest is history because I realized that's what I wanted to do. I loved the idea of telling stories with video and words, and nothing against PR people, but I just didn't want to be confined to like selling one thing regardless of if I believed it or not. And I just loved the idea of being able to go out and experience things and interact and meet people that I might not typically meet on a regular basis. And also to be at the center of it all, I thought was just really cool, whether it's the biggest story of the day or the coolest story of the day. So majored in journalism, and so it quickly switched my major at that point. And right out of college, I'm pretty stubborn and wasn't quite ready to live in the small town. Everybody said, you have to go live in a small town. You've got to climb the ranks. You've got to do this before you can live in a big city. And I said, I kind of want to live out, my early 20s in a fun city. And so I moved to DC without a job. And of course you can't start in a number 8 market on television. It just doesn't work that way. But I worked for the Redskins, the Washington football team now, and I had a lot of fun. I was doing marketing there, and it really obviously wasn't what I wanted to do, but it was, for me, a way to network and get to the point where eventually I would move to this small town. I ended up meeting Bob Schieffer at John Riggins, who was a quarterback for the Redskins. He had the Riggins show, and Bob Schieffer came in, and he was like, what are you doing working here if you want to be a journalist? He helped mentor me and helped guide me to where to go because I really felt like I didn't have a direction for where to start. Applied for jobs all across the country, got my first job in Hagerstown, Maryland, which is about an hour outside of DC, an hour from Baltimore, an hour from DC. And I was a one-man band reporter there and anchor there for 3 years. From there, I went to Lexington, Kentucky. I anchored the weekends with Kyle for 3 years. And after that, I moved to DC, where I was a reporter for the CBS affiliate, WSA 9, for about 4.5 years or so. And I filled in, anchored there, got married, and my husband and I eventually just said, we want to, you always want to go home, right? And I wanted to go home to Tennessee where my family and friends were. And opportunity arose, and they offered me the job to anchor the morning show here at Channel 2. And it was honestly the best decision I've ever made in my career.
Well, Nikki, I feel like I know you a little better than just that person that people see now in the mornings in Nashville, and that you do so much than just show up on the desk, even outside of that station. So you're involved in charities, you're on boards, you're recently an author, correct? Among other things. Yeah. So congratulations on that. That's so awesome. So I want you to share some of that too, because I want to get in, give people an idea of why you do what you do, because again, it's just not that person we see on TV. You do so much more than just limit yourself. You're a huge influencer on different social media platforms. So talk a little bit about, that, why it is what you do, what you do.
I think my love of volunteering started when I was a kid. My dad and mom always instilled that importance in me. And I knew moving around a lot for this job, I knew I wasn't going to be in Hagerstown, Maryland forever. I knew that, but I also knew that there were causes there that I universally cared about. I care about animals. I care about our military. I care about babies. I care about ALS Association. So I found those solid causes that I really cared about. And when I got to Hagerstown, I got involved with those organizations. And I noticed right off the bat that not only was it good for my soul to do that, but I always found really great stories, especially in a small town. And I got networked with a lot of people, and it helps to be a member of the community, because people see you on the TV and they may have a connection with you, they may not, but it's easy to have that one-dimensional look at someone on your TV, and then you go out in the community and you volunteer and you do all these things, and people really get to know you and they see that you do care, even if you're only in that community for a short time. So moving on, I kind of kept that with me throughout my whole career. In Lexington, I was on the board at the Lexington Humane Association. I went to DC, I did the same thing. And now being here, I've kind of carried that on. It's hard to do that with all of our schedules. Doing the morning show is very difficult, and it's also hard to say no to things. And I think that a lot of reporters and anchors can get overwhelmed because you're constantly being pulled in a different direction. But my advice for that would be to find one cause that you really care about, and to really give your all for that one, and to focus on that. And anytime that organization needs you to step up and help and use your platform for good, you can. And that goes back to one of the reasons I decided to be a journalist, which is to speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. And for me, that has always been animals. And that's just a passion of mine, of helping animals. And since becoming a mother, it's also been helping babies and maternal health. And March of Dimes has become a cause I care about. So I think that's all really important for a journalist to be a part of your community. And especially if you plan on being there long term, I care about the community I live in. Not only do I work here, but this is my home, and I'm never leaving Nashville. The second part of your question about doing different activities, in terms of, I just wrote a children's book, and I have a blog and a few other random things. I think that stems from I'm a Gemini, so I'm super all over the place. I have a million different personalities. I could be so excited about one thing and I want to do this project, and then the next day I'm I need to take a nap. I'm not going to do anything. But I think that's why all of us reporters are like this, right? We are go-getters at heart. We have a million different interests. You could be on the scene of a shooting and be super, not happy about it, obviously, but you're into it, you're focused, you get that adrenaline rush for covering that story. And then the next day you're covering a story, about a cat that was adopted. And it's you're super into it and it's great. But I think that all journalists have that in common. We have all those interests. And, so doing all these side projects like writing is just something that I've enjoyed doing to be able to flex my creative muscles. And the book was something I did on maternity leave because, I'm a crazy person and I need to do everything. Does that answer your question?
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Just to give people an idea of, you're more than one dimensional. I don't think there's we can define the amount of things that you do with a word. So I think it's really neat to hear. I love that first part about how you said getting involved with that community. Whatever community you're in, that's a way that you can, discover stories in and of itself, and just getting involved that way. And plus you're giving back and doing good for the community you're in. You're doing good for yourself. It's a win-win across the board. So I hope people are, picking up on, tips that you didn't necessarily, hey, this is a tip, but also if someone's paying attention, these are, brilliant practices to do. So what would you say has been the key or keys, if you will, to your success? And I realize, success is a very subjective word, but, from getting to, moving to DC without, a job in general, and then eventually getting to DC as a reporter, but then ended up in Nashville, how would you describe the success that you've had and how you've been able to achieve what you have achieved?
So I think you nailed it. Success is different to everyone. And my success has changed. My view of success has changed over the past, I would say, maybe 4 years, because initially my dream and my version of success was to go to a top 10 market. And I did that. And that working in DC was always my dream. And that was always my version of success. And after being there, my next goal was to work at Network, right? Like all of our dreams are. And then you start to realize that your priorities change, and they do for some people and they don't for other people. And that's totally fine either way. For me, it was about getting married and wanting to be around my family and becoming a mother. And when I had my little girl very early, and we had some really scary moments with her, all of the things that are really important in life kind of changed my view of success. For me, my version of success now is being in a city that I love with my amazing family, of course, but having a job where they really value family and they value me, and they take care of me and they appreciate me. And I also love what I do. I genuinely love the morning show. It is so much fun for me. So I found that balance. And for me right now, that version of success is balance. I don't want to go work for network news anymore. That's not a success for me. That is a huge success for some people. And that is amazing. Absolutely. But that's just not something that I have any interest in doing anymore, because I want to be around for my daughter. And I will also say another part of that success is finding a station that really would, again, take care of me. And when my daughter was born super premature, they let me leave at work every day to go to the NICU and spend half of my workday with her, and didn't ask any questions. But then I was still able to come here, take my mind off of everything that was going, and pour my heart into my work. And so for me, that is my version of success. But to get there for both of those things, kind of going back to your question, Kyle, I think if you want to be in network, if you want to be in a top 10 market like I did in DC, and to get there, for me, it was all about networking and setting yourself apart. And I was able to do that in a few ways, by my social media presence, and also just by getting out there and meeting a lot of people and using those connections. And also, this sounds super cheesy, but I really do think having a positive attitude and being a warm presence in a newsroom goes a really long way. And I think everywhere I go, my bosses will say a million different things about me, but I think they will all say the same thing, is that I'm a positive part of a newsroom. I like to be involved with everyone. I like to be friendly. I try not to cause drama, and that's important. So I think that that's a good path to success for a lot of people if you want to go to the network and the big market. I don't have network experience, obviously, to get to the top 10 market.
But easily could. I mean, if you really wanted to, and I'm sure you humbly realize that as well, just, from your track record. So, how far you've gone in just a short amount of time. But yes, it is cheesy, but that positive attitude thing, it's such common sense. Now, it's not common practice, because, you want to work around people, you want to be around. So I think, I can attest to that. Nikki and I worked together in 2012, and you made me feel welcome right from the get-go. Your personality is contagious, and you always had fun. You guys always had fun on the weekends. We had fun on the weekends.
We did have fun.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is, if you were any different, then, why would someone want to be around you? Why would you wouldn't be hireable. So it is just simple advice, but unfortunately not everybody takes it. So I appreciate that.
I want to say, I understand that it's really hard to have a positive attitude in this business. A lot of times newsrooms are toxic. Our jobs are hard. You're surrounded by negativity. You're not paid well. You're overworked. You're doing a million different jobs. And I have been there. I will never forget this moment in my first job in Hagerstown. It was over the holidays. I was one-man banding. Our gear was like 40 pounds at this point, and it was freezing. It was up in Maryland, and it was freezing rain. And it was probably 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning. All my friends and family were at home, and I was here doing this random job. And they said, go out and get video of the snow. And I was like, this is awful. I tried to go get coffee at Starbucks. It was closed. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to get some video. I parked my car, which, by the way, ended up breaking down later that day. I get out, I'm shooting, I try to start shooting video. I realize I forgot my camera's rain jacket and my rain jacket. I find a newspaper on the sidewalk, and I cover myself with a newspaper, and I'm shooting that way. And I'm just sitting there thinking, as the freezing rain is pouring on me, this will all be worth it. This will all be worth it. I'm going to remember this moment. And I do remember that moment. But I knew that it would get better. I knew that was temporary, and I knew that would all pay off. And it has, because now I'm nice and warm indoors.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Nikki.
Yeah.
And I remember it so vividly. I think anybody that gets into the business, you will have one of those moments at some point along your career. So perseverance is a big thing for sure. How about the skills that you have? How did you develop your whatever you consider your forte? So I guess share with us what you think, kind of your strengths are. And I know it's not so easy to talk about yourself, but if you were to say, this is what I'm really good at, and this is how I developed these skills, what can you share with those who see this?
I think for me in the beginning, it was storytelling, and that was just something I was just naturally good at. I love to, meet a person and listen to their story and put that into a story. And you're right, I don't like talking about myself in that way and tooting my own horn, but I've heard this over and over throughout my career, that you just make people feel comfortable when you're interviewing them. And I've heard that from, big time important people. And I've heard that from the random person on the street. And they said, oh, you just made me feel really comfortable. And I appreciate that. And that is really important in our job, because we're often asking people who are either strangers to the camera, they're nervous, they're skeptical of the news, or just people who don't want to talk to you or tell their story. And if you can make them feel comfortable, you get the best story out. And then you can be that storyteller that you're born to do. So I think that that's one thing that people always tell me that I'm good at, that I am really proud of. Another thing, and this is different for every part of the business, right? But for an anchor, especially with a morning show, it's being comfortable on camera and being able to go with the flow and being able to balance that happiness of a morning show, but also the tragedy and the serious news that we deal with every single day. And being able to go back and forth is really, really difficult. But I think that I'm good at that. I've been told I'm good at that. Again, I hate saying that. But I think that's something that's really important to do. And that comes with experience. I watched old tape of myself, doing crosstalk or banter or whatever. I'm like, oh my God, that is cringeworthy. But I think just being yourself and knowing whatever your personality and your strength is, letting that come out, because that's why people like you, right? So why shouldn't you show that on camera?
Yeah, and I like that you shared that you've watched yourself back. I know some people are completely against that. I watched myself back because it made me better. I picked up on tendencies that I had, and it, just reaffirmed that I was getting better, because it's like, wow, how in the world did I get hired in the first place? And then you can look back and say, I've gotten better. So I appreciate that you shared that, because some people won't even admit oh no, I don't watch myself. That's, as if you're on a high horse, but I use it as a teaching tool.
I still find myself cringeworthy on many days, actually.
Well, I'm sure your viewers don't. You wouldn't be where you are. And I know it's not easy to talk about yourself. Most people I talk on here, say that. So I appreciate you sharing, because that's what's going to help, I think, people who are trying to get into this, pick up on just some of those tips. So what was the best advice you think that you've been given in all the years you've been doing what you're doing?
Oh my gosh, that's really hard. I don't really know that I have one specific sentence of advice, but a general idea. And there are a couple of them. And one is just to go out and do it. You don't know unless you ask, right? I applied for my first job, I think for maybe 6 months. All I got was no, or just no answers, or no phone calls, or no emails. And I really wanted to go to Hagerstown. I wanted that to be my first job, because my boyfriend at the time lived in DC, and I didn't want to be too far away from him. And I was determined to go to that market. I didn't want to go too far away. And I called and I called and I called, and the news director literally wouldn't pick up my phone calls, wouldn't respond to my emails. And finally, I networked and I used my connections, something that my dad taught me that has really served me well over the years, and used who's now my mentor, Bob Schieffer, and said, what do I do? And he was like, let me pick up the phone and call him. And he called the news director and he said, oh yeah, I've got her tape right here. It's under a stack of 45 other tapes. I haven't looked at it. He looked at it, he called me, and I got the job. Now that is a picture perfect view, right? I got the job because somebody called about me, but they wouldn't have hired me just because of the phone call if he didn't see something in me, right? So I used something to my advantage, and that was networking. And it was also just going out and doing it and not being afraid to fail, because what would have happened if I didn't get the job? If I just always said, I'm just going to stay here and work for the Redskins, I'm going to do this, it's fine, it's fun. I would always wondered. I would have always been like, that was my dream, and I never went after it. But if I didn't get it, who cares? I would have been fine. I'm sure I would have had, a great job doing something up there. You just never
Yeah,
know. And then the next part of
right.
that is going back to what my dad has taught me, which is having a positive attitude. And that goes so far with literally every part of your life. And it is not easy. And I do understand that. But I found that if I'm ever feeling that way, I can get up, I can walk around and take deep breaths. And it really does help. That's stupid, I know, but it works.
Whatever works, right? I mean, if that's what worked for you and gotten you to Nashville, then, keep on doing more of what's working, less of what isn't working. So, Nikki, I really appreciate you've been sharing all kinds of intangible stuff. People, can easily get technical things from a textbook. And that's really why I want to do stuff like this, to get people to give perspective and, the stuff that really moves the needle. So with that said, what do you think separates the good from the great? And again, this is kind of talking about yourself again, but at the same time, you've been in this long enough to see, who does it well and maybe, who does it really well.
I think it depends on what job you're talking about, right? So if you're talking about a reporter, I think you have to be like a go-getter. You have to be out running, ready to do anything, ready to take on that story, and also being a storyteller. And reporters' jobs are so hard right now. I don't really report anymore, but I see these reporters and they're hustling their asses off, and I see that work, and I know that it pays off. And that is what you need to do to be a reporter right now. To be an anchor, I think you need to be able to have that balance of temperament, right? Like, we are getting hit from all sides, from people calling us fake news or saying we're biased or saying we don't have pure intentions, and the ability or saying you look stupid today, you look fat today. Like, I hate watching you on TV. And then for women, dealing with creepy men, like, we are getting hit from all sides in literally every part of our lives. Mm-hmm. And being able to take all of that and let it roll off your back is really important. And that will make you successful. If you internalize that and you take that in, that will affect you, and you will become angry and bitter. And I see myself doing that sometimes. I definitely feel that. I'm having a day where I'm just getting bombarded with tweets about something, and I found that when I just turn it off and I walk away, that's really helpful for my mental health. Honestly, it's just been years doing it over and over and over again, and just learning to be myself. I would say, find a mentor. That is probably the most important thing you can do. And don't be afraid to ask for somebody to be a mentor. I find so many people reach out and they say, I don't want to bother you. Would you mind to do this? And yeah, some people may not answer your email. They might not respond. But if you can find somebody you look up to, somebody maybe you see yourself in, somebody you want to model your career after, or you see your personality in them, watch them and see how they do it well, whether it be the transitions or reading or how they pace themselves, side projects they do, how they interact on air and off air and on social media. Try to model yourself after them, and then reach out to them. Don't be afraid to do that. One of the things that I did when I was job hunting was I went to every website for every station I wanted to go to, and I read the bios of the reporters and anchors. And if I had any connection to them, like if I saw one person who had a degree from the University of Tennessee, or one person who happened to know somebody who I knew who worked at this small market where I used to live, I would reach out to that person and use that connection. Sometimes it works, sometimes it didn't. But like with the story with Bob Schieffer picking up the phone and calling, all it takes is for one person to walk into your news director's office and say, hey, have you heard of this person? And be like, oh, yeah. And they're sticking in your mind. Now, who knows if it's going to amount to anything, but it could. And that little small thing that you do could set you apart.
That's great, Nikki. First, I appreciate, again, the time and the knowledge and experience, everything you've shared with us. So in respect of your time, I'm going to end with what I hope will be a fun question. The last thing I want to ask you about. And what's the most embarrassing TV moment, whether that's live TV or behind the scenes, that you've had, or moments that you've had? I know most people who have been doing this as long as you have, there have been some, wow, I remember that time. But anything that comes to mind as far as embarrassing on TV moments for you?
I've had a lot, for sure. I don't really stress out too much when I mess up on TV, because I mess up every single day. And I'll get to your answer in just a moment, but a news director once told me, I want you to mess up on air when you're anchoring. Don't stress about the stumble, because when you're talking to regular people, you stumble, you forget your words, you say something wrong. That's how normal people talk. I don't want you to be a robot. If I wanted a robot to anchor the news, I'd get a robot. So that's kind of stuck with me. And that's why I don't really sweat it when I stumble and forget my words. It's easy to say when you're an anchor and you have a teleprompter in front of you. When I was a reporter in DC, I don't think I had been there very long, but obviously I was nervous because it was my first job in a top 10 market, and I was so excited. I was on the morning show, and I had this stupid assignment. There was nothing going on that day. Yes, that happens in big cities. And my executive morning producer was like, why don't you just go? It's National Coffee Day. Let's do a story at a coffee shop and just go out there and talk to people. And as soon as something happens, we'll break you and we'll move. And he was like, it's just for like the 4:30 and the 5 a.m. show. I'm like, okay, like I can do this. I live and breathe coffee. I can BS about this, right? So I get there and it's dark, of course, and it's super lame. And the coffee shop isn't even open. And my photographer and I are just sitting there, and they're like, okay, coming up. I'm like, let's go. Like, and so my live shot comes on, and Kyle, I'm not even telling you, like, I don't know what happened to my brain. I don't know if I didn't have coffee that day. Completely forgot everything that I was talking about. I forgot the story that I was doing. I forgot where I was standing. I forgot what street I was on. I forgot what part of DC I was in. And if you are from or live in DC, you know that like people care about their specific neighborhoods. And if you get your neighborhoods messed up, like people take not offense to it, but they get, up in arms about it. When I finally started to figure out where I was, I couldn't spit it out. It was almost like I had like a stroke on air, and I stumbled through the entire thing. And then I just hear my producer in my ear just yelling, just rap, just stop talking, just stop talking. And I was mortified because here I am just a few months into a top 10 market job where I'm like so excited, and I blow it on a dumb story about coffee.
So how did you handle it? I mean, that's incredible to hear. And I appreciate you sharing that, because that's something that a lot of people could have been like, you know what, if they don't know about it, they don't know about it. They don't need to know about it. So I appreciate your transparency and honesty in that, because, a lot of people might think, well, that happened to me in my first job, but here you are sharing it at a top 10, and, it didn't keep you from getting to Nashville and doing what you're doing today. So again, I appreciate you sharing that, but how did you learn from that? I mean, did you learn from that, or what could you learn from that? What happened next?
Well, so in the moment, I was obviously mortified and worried about, are they ever going to trust me with a big story again? Are they going to take me off air? Like, what's going to happen? But my photographer, his name was Kevin, and he had been at that station for 40 years. He's a legend. And he was like, just calm down, take some deep breaths. It's just local news. Nobody cares. You're not doing a serious story about something big. If there's one story to mess up, it's this one about coffee. You're not talking about the president. You're not talking about something controversial. You're talking about coffee. Nobody cares. When we came back on air, make a joke about not having coffee and move on. And I did, and it was fine. And I let it roll off my back.
That's awesome. Good for you, Nikki. And Nikki, so great to see you. Like I said, I've taken enough of your time today.
No, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Hopefully, like I said, we just honestly just scratched the surface. We didn't even talk about, what makes you a great storyteller. I know we could make this completely about that, but I don't want to take any more of your time. But again, it's been great to see you, and thank you for sharing what you've shared with us today.
Of course, I'm happy to help. And thank you so much, Kyle, for including me. I don't know I hope I offered something besides just yapping about myself for an hour.
No doubt at all. Thanks again, Nikki. We'll do this again soon.
And thank you for checking out this channel. If you found this content beneficial, I'd appreciate it if you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and share it with someone you think might find it beneficial as well, because this channel was simply started and created to serve you, to help others grow, to learn how other successful TV journalists do or did it. So take what serves you so you can get better faster and reach your next level.